Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this Saturday morning's Fife Property Show. Today we're going to be talking about a landlord's best friend, Jim, and how to find the perfect letting agent and property manager. So for me, obviously, as a letting agent, I know this is a very important thing for a lot of landlords. Jim, you as a landlord for many years will also agree with having the right letting agent and property managers looking after your properties is so important. And a brilliant letting agent and property manager can have a really profoundly positive impact on your life as a landlord, for your enjoyment, the profit, your spare time. But how do you find that perfect one is what we're going to explore today. So I don't know, maybe people check maybe the neighbourhood let boards that are up or source from portals or for different agents with rental homes that are on at the moment, or maybe they just do a Google search for local firms. But today we're going to break it down and find out which one of those are actually the best suit for you as a landlord or an investor. Now, Jim, do you find, I know obviously you ended up opening your own letting agency, and I look after your stuff now, but did you find that you were pushed to do that kind of decision because you didn't think there was anybody else that would do what you thought needed to be done? Or was it just not?
I couldn't find a letting agent out there that could do any different. It could do any what I wanted them to do. I mean, I tried and trained a whole load of them. I even had a major franchise letting agent at the time, and I tried to train them to do what I wanted them to do, and they just couldn't get it. They just didn't get it. I think primarily it was a lot to do with the landlords. They didn't understand what a landlord really wanted and how important it was to a landlord to have certain things done, and have certain feedback as well. And what that primary feedback should be. So they just didn't get it because they weren't landlords themselves. I think that was the main reason. I then ended up setting up our own letting agency because I just felt that I couldn't get that type of service.
Yeah, I have to agree because I know that obviously myself through the years I've done training and we all have to be qualified now and things as well, which is fine. But I know that what you've taught me through the years from your experiences as a landlord and things as well for the way back for the beginning is something that you don't get taught in training, and a lot of other agents don't have that knowledge. And obviously I realise that's why you obviously made that decision. Like I'm going to do this myself here to get it right, which is good. Other landlords and investors who are looking for agents out there, you might be lucky and stumble upon maybe a really good blog that's packed full of maybe priceless tips and think, this agent really knows what they're talking about and they know their stuff. Hopefully you're maybe feeling that just now and when you watch this today, when we go through this, because we are very, as you can see, social media and video driven and content driven. And I think it's really good to keep educating ourselves and everyone else. And that is something that we do, obviously, predominantly, mostly every day we do it. And I was going to say every week, but we do it every day. But yeah, once you've chosen those agents that you want to meet, it's time to really scratch beneath the surface and find a bit more detail about the agent and really grill your agent. I was talking about this the other day. If you really grill your agent and ask the questions and they can't answer them, then that's when you've got an issue. And ask maybe things like, and this is what we're going to cover today, is how an agent plans to get you the top market rent, and not just now, but forever and throughout your obviously buy-to-let journey, their knowledge of existing and future legislation to keep everything above board and legal, what your experience will be like as a client, what should they expect from you as an agent, the way their business and their team operate and what their processes and procedures are, and what happens when things go wrong. How are they going to resolve that? What's their process and procedure for tackling things when it all goes wrong? Because sometimes it can, and it's not always plain sailing, but it's all about obviously rectifying that situation as quickly as possible. And there should be a strategy in place with every agent to approach that. So there's a lot to answer in there. And today we are going to try and find the right questions to ask potential letting agents and property managers so that you could feel that you are in safe hands and that you're in capable hands while you are handing over your buy-to-let investments for management.
So what's the peak performance plan then? What should you be looking at? and how should you be going about that? How could you find the top property and letting agent and attract the right best tenants and all the rest of it, Richard?
Yeah, I was saying about getting top rent and getting top rent for your property and attracting the very best tenants means reaching and inspiring the right people. So ask yourself maybe the following questions and when you meet your agent. So do they explain their process for pricing your property? That's obviously the valuation and how they got to that. Offer smart tips on how to maybe add a little bit rental value. They set out an annual review strategy, which is really important now with all the legislation we've got now, to ensure your investment keeps pace with the current market. So that's the first thing, I think, really put them to task on how they are pricing and valuing your property and how they're going to continue that to keep it at that level at the top of the market. Also ask them, how do they make sure that they get the very best tenants? This all comes down to the pre-viewing qualifying. We've got a pre-qualifying stage before people even view a property. That is so important now. The checks that they go through and the referencing procedure. Now, in the blog that's attached to this video, there is a link to our previous blog, which you could read about that process for referencing in a wee bit more depth, because if we sidetrack into referencing too much, we could do a whole show on it, which we have. So yeah, that whole referencing process, and that is coupled with their on paper in terms of their financial situation and their status, and also in person as well. That kind of marries up and looking for how to look for those red flags and things. The referencing process and finding the right people at the beginning is so important. And then you need to think about, are their photos and their descriptions clearly targeting the high earning professionals? And also, do they do video? I mean, video content. I mean, obviously, video is the way forward at the moment, and we do that obviously with every listing that we do. But I mean, pictures and descriptions have their place, of course. But that interactive video and walk around and things, do they do that? Do they have a social media presence? And are they updated later? If your property becomes available again, do they just use the same photos? Do they update them? Do they do a new video? Do you know how does that process work if you're reletting as well? Not just the initial let, because it will come in time that they relet. So they should have all that, and any agent should have the answer to that on the spot without having to go away and think about it and come back. Those are all things that they should know straight off. And it is always worth digging that little bit deeper, both online and face-to-face, to really narrow down the field of agents that you find are really going to be your long-term partner in your investment journey, especially if you're what we would call an armchair investor, Jim, where investors want to build a portfolio, really be hands-off because they've got their own life, they've got their own family, they've got their own job still, and this is a side thing for them. So if they could really feel that they could entrust their investment to someone to look after and manage and deal with the tenants and deal with the maintenance with minimal input for them, that's really what you should be aiming for and what they should be able to demonstrate to you. And I'm sure you'll agree with that, Jim.
This is a lot to do with finding the right person. I mean, if you can't find the right person, I mean, it's difficult. I just felt compelled to do it all myself and actually build my own system. Because as I said before in the beginning, when we started this, I just felt that I couldn't find the right letting agent.
Yeah.
They didn't have a clue what to do. They didn't have a clue how to do it. And this is people that were actually involved with, as I said before, with corporates. They looked the part. They definitely looked the part. But they just didn't get it. It was purely down to the fact that, well, it's like what you say. What was their peak performance plan? What were they intending to do? And yeah, they've got a corporate system, which is a franchise system, which they plug into, and it tells them all the answers. But what it is it's the answers for new landlords, if that makes sense, or new investors they're trying to attract. It's they're probably just one step ahead of them in terms of what the answer should be for them to give them. So all they're doing is looking at a checklist and actually going back to the checklist and then go back to the landlord or the new investor and giving them the answer. The new investor or the new landlord actually hasn't got a clue because they're new, so they don't know with the commercial reality about what it's like to be a landlord over all these years and what you've got to deal with from day to day to be a landlord rather than a letting agent or an armchair investor. So you get these answers all the time, and they're just generic answers, and it's just for want of a better phrase, it's just a fob off answer. There's no coherent strategy around what they're doing and how they're doing it. And that's when you start to divulge all these different things about what are they actually doing, what do you see them doing, but you don't know what you don't know as a new investor or a new landlord. And if you don't know what you don't know, you can only just go on what everybody else says. But if it depends, you know. I don't think I've ever recently seen anybody endorsing any other letting agents over the last couple of years. I've never really seen that in any landlord forums about people saying, you know, you need to go and use so and so, or you need to go and use so and so. I've never seen that, and that's unusual because you usually get that quite a lot. But we've been heavily involved in these associations. You would, and these forums that I'm on, you would think you would get that quite a bit, but you don't. And it makes me think, why is that the case? Is everybody just so generic and vanilla? It's you know, we all merge into each other and we don't actually differentiate ourselves from each other. Is there a format that everybody's now sussed? You know, do they know exactly what they should be doing? Does everybody else know what they exactly should be doing? I don't know the answer to that, but you can only go on your experiences and how you do it, and that's probably why we joined the ESTAs, because the ESTAs is independent feedback from your landlords. They get to vote for you in the ESTAs, but you have no influence over that vote and what they say. And the ESTAs actually is based on, you know, key questions which are fundamental to allow the agent to get the right feedback to see if they're doing their job properly. And I don't mean like they're answering the phone and, you know, they're happy-go-lucky to the landlord and maybe they're, you know, it's not based on a panel of judges. It's based on the customer experience, and I think customer experience is everything. And the peak performance plan, yeah, we can talk about it till we're blue in the face about what they should be doing, how they should be doing it, but are they actually doing it? That's the key. Everybody can tell you they're doing it, but, you know, are they actually doing it? That's the key here. So it's, you know, it's interesting how that would be the case, but then it also goes on to the fact that how much do they know about the legislation? And how many people do know about the legislation? How many people do know about the, you know, the Standard Repairing Act in Scotland? How many people do know about the below tolerance, you know, threshold, about what is tolerant for somebody in a property, and also how does that marry up with the standard tolerance with the actual repairing act itself, and which one takes over the other one. And these are the fundamental things you want to really. These are the fundamental things you should really know as a landlord about a letting agent if you're considering using them, and you should be asking them questions almost like you're interviewing them. You know, that's what you should be doing, and you should be asking questions like, you know, if this happens, what would you do about that? If that happened, what would you do about this? You know, all these different things, and then that's when you'll get a really good insight into why that is the case. I mean, the lettings law is constantly evolving all the time, and you know yourself, and literally just in 2 days' time, we're going to have the start of the new legislation coming in place for the transitional movement for the Scottish Government to move into some sort of fixed legislation and the way forward for rent controls in some fashion or way or form. Incidentally, somebody actually there the now about what on TikTok, you know, not right there, but on a previous post that we posted about, you know, housing associations put their rents up every year. The council puts their rents up every year. A landlord puts his rent up every 5 years, and there's pitchforks and torches.
It's castigated. You know, I know.
It's like, what? We've only put our rent up, you know, after 5 years. We've never had a rent increase for 5 years, and all of a sudden there's pitchforks and torches. And yet the council and the housing associations do it every year, and nobody bats an eyelid. So these are the sort of things we've got to contend with. And lettings law is constantly evolving, as I said, and the new legislation is coming in place. And we'll probably do a separate show on that and what the implications are for that. But I actually replied to them and says, when they says, what do you think about the new lettings law coming in? I thought, I'm actually quite optimistic, saying that rents are going to rise and income's going to rise as well as a result of that. And I could see sunshine on the horizon with the new legislation coming in. And it's like, what am I missing if that's the case? If everybody else is running for the hills, how do I see a different opportunity here? Or is everybody just basing everything on emotion, and they're not actually really thinking about what the hard facts are about how this will be implemented and how it will affect everybody, and what is the commercial reality about how it will pan out in itself?
So
this is
how
all
it
about,
affects in the long term.
so lettings law constantly evolving. Your agent needs to really on top of all this stuff, the legal stuff, so you don't get caught out. Remember, if you don't have a gas safe certificate, or your letting agent doesn't have your gas safe certificate, and your tenant dies in the property, you're going to jail for manslaughter.
The landlord.
Yeah. The landlord's going to jail for manslaughter. The letting agent will not get anything. There's no repercussions for them. It's the landlord's legal duty to make sure that gas certificate's in place and make sure all that legislation's complied with. The letting agent's only there to do it for you. And, they're qualified to some degree, especially in Scotland, because every letting agent has to be Letwell qualified or Property Mark qualified. These are the two separate qualifications under the Scottish Government to be able to let property. But that doesn't mean to say they're doing it properly. So these are all things. I mean, I still, even though regardless of you guys actually, even though you actually still run all my properties and take most of the day-to-day decisions off of me for that reason, and that's the way I wanted it, and I taught you how to do that. I still have a spreadsheet that tells me where everything is right now.
Yeah, I was looking at it.
Yeah, absolutely, because I'm no daft. It's like, I'm not abdicating the whole responsibility. I'm delegating the responsibility, but I'm not abdicating it. I'm not just saying, oh, well, it's nothing to do with me anymore, fold my arms and just going, well, if the tenant's no got this, it's like, it's no my fault, it's the letting agent. It's like, no, it's down to the landlord, because it's the landlord primarily, it's the person in charge. The letting agent just does the job that they ask them to do on their behalf to the best of their ability, and it's up to the landlord to make sure they get the right letting agent as a result of that.
So it's all the day-to-day. It's all the day-to-day decisions and things, the time-consuming things that you've obviously passed on, Jim. But you still obviously, like you say, have a control of things in the background. And you're absolutely right about really asking your agent those questions and scratch well beneath the surface, because your agent should know the answers to questions, and you could tell by them using examples and experience and things to explain how different scenarios will play out and how they will tackle things. And if they can't do that on the spot when you ask them, without having to come back to you, then you might have to question, do you really know your stuff? Are you really experienced enough to handle my and trust and really have that confidence in an agent to look after your portfolio without having that doubt in the back of your mind, especially when it comes to things like safety, as you said about the gas safety scenario.
Yeah. But the classic example of this recently is when you look at some of the property adverts and you look at what they're doing. I mean, I'm no, when you think about it, I don't really keep up to date with the legislation, but for some reason I still know what's going on. And I probably know more than most letting agents will know, and most landlords will know, because I don't know why that is, but I just read everything possible. I mean, the new national trading standards requirements are in place now. And I bet you most letting agents have no idea what the new national trading standards requirements are, and the material information they're required to actually report when they actually list a property for rent. And yet, no, they don't. Well, I know they don't. And here's how I know they don't, because I look at the property listings and I actually know some of that information is missing completely. Now, do the trading standards care? Absolutely not.
No.
I'll say that again. Do the trading standards care? No, absolutely not. The trading standards only work on their system about if anything goes wrong, then they'll investigate, and then woe betide you if you've got something
a reactive system instead of a proactive system.
It's called exception reporting. If a member of the public comes to them and complains, they'll investigate. If another agent comes about another agent and says that's not working properly, they just go, well, that's just sour grapes. Well, I know they've not got a gas certificate for something. So that's okay then, as far as you're concerned, trading standards. And it's like, well, that's just sour grapes. It's like, okay then, I'll just let it go. But these are the, and I'm not saying I do that all the time, but I've done it years ago in the past, and then I've just given up. I thought, well, who cares? If the trading standards don't care, why should I? I've probably put more effort into caring about what the trading standards should care about, more than trading standards can care about themselves. if that makes overall sense. I mean, are the tenancy agreements as well? The tenancy agreements is a really classic one. Are tenancy agreements done? Are inventories done? Are deposit taking procedures set up to protect you as a landlord, just in case of legal disputes, in case of any disputes, or even if you're trying to get your property back for any single reason, or even keep you safe from fines and worst, in the worst case scenario, jail for a criminal conviction. Yes, you can go to jail as a landlord on a criminal conviction. If your letting agent doesn't get it right, it comes back to you. It haunts you. It doesn't haunt anybody else. So this is why it's so important to make sure everything is done and there's a place for everything. This comes down to finding people that are really bureaucratic and process driven and system driven to make sure everything is in place every single time for that reason. They're not the most happy-go-lucky optimistic people, but they're certainly process driven, they're certainly bureaucratic, they certainly make sure everything's in a place and a place for everything. And that's the type of people you should have on your side. Definitely. So you don't need to be happy-go-lucky, letting agents. You want people that do their job properly and actually make sure you're protected as a landlord. Definitely. I mean, here's another thing. Let's talk about how do they schedule safety checks, certificates for gas, electricity, EICRs, so that's the electricity, the gas safe certificates, the smoke alarms, the heat detectors. Yes, you shouldn't have a smoke alarm in your kitchen. It should be a heat detector. Every single gas appliance should have a carbon monoxide detector within 1 meter of that appliance. Every single time, you should have some sort of gas carbon monoxide detector within 1 meter of that appliance. Okay, the other one as well, energy performance certificates, to ensure that you've always got the valid paperwork. I mean, EPCs, it's like, it's just an EPC, but there's a requirement to actually display it somewhere in the property and actually make sure the tenant's got it as well. Make sure the tenant has the EPC. Now, we've had in the past, everybody's got this, my tenant doesn't have it. It's like, well, you were actually given it in your park, your moving park, and you saw it and you took sight of it and you actually signed for it as well. So sit there and claim to someone else you've no got it isn't really factual. I think the expression is, I think you must be mistaken, is what they say.
I think as we do obviously hard copy move-in packs still, but we also do the digital one, and it also all goes out in email as well. So that's all your certificates and everything. So we've got that covered, because EPCs.
And these are the most important things, and making sure when it's very rare that it ever comes to the eviction. It's very rare for any particular reason. No one wants to evict a tenant. The only reasons most tenants get evicted is because they're antisocial. They've racked up a huge amount of rent arrears, and even though they can pay, they just don't want to pay. That's it in a nutshell. Or they're starting damaging your property. And in the other case scenario is you need the property back because you've got to sell it, or somebody's to move into it from a member of your family. These are the only main concerns, but primarily most landlords do not want to get rid of a tenant if they're looking after your property, they're paying their rent on time, and they're not antisocial towards their neighbours. That's why would you want to get rid of somebody like that? There would be no reason to get rid of someone. And history records are, if you go back all the records and everything like that, very few evictions are done for anything otherwise. Well, they can't be in Scotland. You can't be in Scotland. You have to be prescribed by the law by, I think it's 18 grounds under legislation. Some are discretionary, some are mandatory. I think, got a funny feeling that a lot of them are discretionary now.
Yeah.
As a result of that. So these are all the things that are coming. And even for England themselves, I mean, they've got the Renter Reforms Bill on the way. I don't know what's going on with that. But it's not any of our concern, to be honest. We're Scottish legislation, completely different housing legislation than England. But it's definitely worth finding out how an agent plans to absorb the changes and keep the landlords on the right side of the law. This is what's probably the most primarily important reason that you should be choosing a letting agent. If you're considering choosing a letting agent and it's based on fees, you're off your head to coin a phrase. You have got the wrong attitude towards this, because literally the difference between 10% and 12% as a fee is, if you've got a rent of 500 quid a month times 0.2, you're talking about an extra tenner a month plus VAT, so 12 quid. You're actually choosing a letting agent purely based on fees because you could save 12 quid a month. Really? You shouldn't be a landlord if that's the case. If this is what you're choosing a letting agent for, it's like, oh, I can get it for 8% off of something, I can get it for 10%. If that's the reason you're choosing a letting agent, you shouldn't be a landlord. Trust me, leave the market, sell up now, go and do something else, because you're more than likely going to give us a bad reputation at some point in time, because when it comes to repairs and improvements, you're probably less likely to do them than any other landlord, because you just focus on how much it costs you every single time. If you do it right and you get the numbers right as a landlord, every single time, this will work for you. You will always make money, a reasonable amount of money, not an obscene profit, but a reasonable amount of money, but also profit in order to reinvest back in your property for the benefit of the tenant, because after all, that is your customer.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Jim. About the fee thing. It's like when you've got an agent who's that little bit extra, but you've got that extra confidence in the fact that from a safety aspect and things, that the property is going to be kept compliant and you're going to be kept safe. It really doesn't compare at all. So you really need to think about that. And I think people watching might think, well, I don't know the questions to ask a landlord, an agent, about how they could protect me as a landlord. But then it's simply like you said about the listing, Jim, like what's going to be on the listing, and things like landlord registration, the EPC rating and things. They're all things that need to be on the listing. And then obviously their procedure with certificates and things. So it's not as complicated as you think it might be to actually find the right agent by asking these questions. But also I think then you need to think about, will you really actually enjoy being a client with this agent? Do you know, will you get along, and will you be a good fit? And whoever you choose as a letting agent, or even like your property management team, the experience of working with them should really be a pleasure all the time. I know obviously some days can be difficult in situations, but your letting agent or your property manager should be trained to diffuse that and manage everybody's expectation, and everybody should come out feeling that that was handled well and feel satisfied that it's been taken care of. But how do you know in advance that that's going to be the reality of what it's going to be like? So you can get a pretty good idea with asking certain questions at the beginning. So who will be your main point of contact? Is the person who comes to value your property, or will it be handed over to a property management team? I have this sometimes because I go out and we have the property management team that work underneath myself and other letting agents. So, but when you build that great rapport as a letting agent with somebody, they then expect, is it you that's going to follow it all the way through? But that's just, I can't do that. I couldn't do that as one person and have a team behind me. So you need to make that clear to them, like this will be passed on.
I think you've made a valid point there. It's amazing the amount of people in the past, when I very first started out and people were coming to me to let their property, I was amazed in the past at how many actually thought, because I was out to see them, I would be the person managing the property. And to a degree, I'd be then quite concerned about what they're thinking, because in my mind, it's like the person coming out to see me, okay, I would like them to oversee what's going on, but I certainly wouldn't like them to be the person managing the property, because that is a one-man band. And it's like, if you've got a one-man band, when this person falls ill, you've had it. You know, that's I would never want that. I would want to make sure that somebody's got a really good, robust team round about them. Somebody that's in maybe in frontline lettings, or let the property. Somebody that's actually in the accounts department, will chase the rent. Somebody that's in the property management department will make sure all the certificates are in place. All these different people have different functions. So if one of these functions go down, all the other functions will be running. Whereas if you're relying on just one person and signing up with them, saying, "Oh, they'll be doing my property from start to finish," it's like, I'll be pretty worried about that.
Yeah, and it isn't the easiest thing sometimes when people are really, like, you'll know this, Jim, when you go out and build a really good rapport and people invest in you, but you also have a team behind you to obviously support you and to follow that whole process. So you need to make that clear to them. And like you say, Jim, one person can't do it all. and they wouldn't be able to provide you the service that you really needed if they were trying to do it as a one-man band. So that's definitely something to explore. Like we said earlier, Jim, look at the reviews. What do the reviews say? Do they have good feedback from the landlords? Like, obviously, we take part in the Estes for that very reason, to get that feedback and to get referrals. I mean, to have someone refer you to another landlord is something, if that's happening, then you know you're doing something right. I had that last week. And it really reassures you, right, okay, we're on the right track here, because this landlord's recommended me to this landlord and I've never even met them before. So an agent doesn't need to have hundreds and hundreds of reviews to be worth your consideration, but the ones that they have should really primarily be positive for the most part. And that's a good indicator on.
It's not an easy one to do that, though. Let me talk about reviews, because most reviews, you know, it's difficult because, you know, as a letting agent, you kind of think you're torn between, should I be concentrating on actually looking after my customers and looking after my tenants, looking after my landlords, or should I be concentrating on trying to get reviews all the time from people that are positive in order to attract more business? And so there's a balance here, especially if you've got limited resources in this current climate, because there's about 30 or 40 tenants chasing every single property. So you don't really have much time to get external reviews all the time. So what you find is when you do a Google search, sometimes you actually find all the negative reviews, because it's just people. And I suppose you can wade through them, because I could think about the ones that we get now and again, because yes, we do get negative reviews, but it's primarily from people we've told to go and take a jump at themselves. You know, it's like no chance. I will not deal with you as a landlord, because I know you're the type of person that will not reinvest in the property for the tenant. Or sometimes it's like for the tenants, it's like, you're not the ideal tenant. You've got a credit rating which is like rock bottom, even negative to a degree, and you've got a track record of antisocial behaviour, and we wouldn't touch you with a barge pole. And then they go on keyboard warriors on social media, and then they start castigating you, and then they start going into Trustpilot and saying something on there, and then Google reviews, and you can't really do anything about it except respond to them nicely in some shape or form, and kind of in some way emphasize to the prospective customer actually reading that review that not as all as seems in that opening statement that that person said. Why would I want to reject somebody or get rid of somebody? It's actually a really good landlord or a really good tenant. Why would I want to do that? Why would you want to upset somebody like that? Why would you need to do that if that's the case? Mostly, all these reviews are down to the fact that if anything goes wrong, then they don't like the fact that you're taking action against it on behalf of the landlord.
Yeah.
By the way, the landlord pays us to do that. That's their job. It's like we're not there on behalf of anybody else except to manage the property on behalf of the landlord and represent the landlord's interests. That's what we're primarily there for.
Do you know, to add to that, I think maybe some agents will have the approach that, well, I can't turn away business. I can't afford to turn away business, whether I think they're not going to be a good landlord or not. I'll just take it on anyway.
I would be turning away.
And my advice is the amount of time and stress, and you know, for everyone involved, if you don't feel like this, that you've got a landlord that's maybe not going to be proactive, they're not going to reinvest, they're not going to look after the property, they're not going to work well with you, walk away. Because
here's a really good telltale sign about a landlord. If it's a wee red flag goes up every single time, and I must admit, is if a landlord comes along and says, I've got a portfolio of 10 or 20 properties and I'm wanting them to bring them to you from another agent. I'm like, whoa, there's something not right about that, maybe. Just let me explore that a wee bit more. And then you've got to ask the right questions. And I know in the past we've actually turned away people like that.
Yeah.
Because we've realised it's like, that's why you're leaving another letting agent, because you're not a really good landlord. Therefore, we ain't taking you on either, if that's the case. And some will slip through the net, but you get them eventually, and then just tell them, maybe you better go somewhere else.
Yeah, I had that actually. I think it was a couple of years ago, and I took over a portfolio of about 7 from another local agent, and maybe stupidly, I didn't really think too much about it at the time. And then as we got further down the line, it transpired the other agent got rid of them because obviously a number of reasons. And then obviously I picked up on that eventually and learned the hard way, and I had to obviously walk away, unfortunately. And you're totally right, Jim. If you're an agent and that comes as an opportunity to you, question why. if it's coming from another agent, because they've obviously passed them on.
So then that's why it's important. That's why the only review system we've got is the ESTAs, which is based on the customer experience. It's not based on anybody just going on randomly and putting something in. And the ESTAs is nicely connected to Google reviews as well, because you can't do it at the same time when you vote for us in the ESTAs. So it's actually people that have used us and people that we are working on behalf of, both tenants staying with us and actually landlords actually using our services. That's where these reviews are coming from, and they're laid bare right in front of you on our website. You know, we keep them on our website. Come hell or high water, whether it's a 4-star, 5-star, 3-star, 2-star, whether it came in as a 1-star. I don't think we've ever got anything below 4.
I don't think I've had a 1-star.
Or anything below 4.5 or something like that. But I genuinely believe it. That's probably the way forward, actually asking the customers. You know, what somebody's experience that they have when they walk in the office is a completely different thing. I mean, you don't know for a fact if, as reading a review that they've done just by walking in the office, if they've been totally obnoxious towards the person sitting behind the desk. You know, and whether they've had a bad day. And I tell you what, I'm going to take it out in the first person I find. You know, and if I don't get the answer I want, I'm just going to jump up and down and stamp my feet and, you know, scream bloody murder. And that's the sort of things that you come across now and again. That's the ones that end up on Trustpilot. That's the ones that end up on Google. But they're few and far between. You notice them, they're like from 5 or 6 years ago. And I'm talking about some in particular. They're about 5 or 6 years ago. And I've just responded back to them saying, funny enough, I've actually checked all my records and you're not a tenant or a landlord of us. So I have no idea why you've got this review on here, other than you obviously don't like us. Can't please everybody.
No, and that's the thing. You can't please everybody, and not everybody will work well together, no matter how good they are in their respective field. Some people just don't gel, and that's unfortunately the way it is. With regards to obviously whether you will work together, other questions to ask is maybe, I mean, does the agency or the company that you're looking to work with, do they have an official company ethos, and do they give you their full business terms where they obviously, when they meet with you, where you're at the appraisal and things, not just a list of their fees. Do you know, it's easy to just say, oh, here's what we charge, but do you know, do they talk you through how their processes and how they work and how they approach things, so you know in advance what you're actually signing up for? I mean, that's so important. I mean, to turn up with a fees list and not really go into the ins and outs of how things work as a red flag for me if I was a landlord or an investor.
This is why I find it quite baffling when people just phone up and say, what's your fees? What? Well, I don't know my fees until I know what you want me to do. I just want you to let my property. Okay, but do you want a fully managed service? Do you want a rent-only service? Do you want a let-only service? Do you want us to do regular inspections? How many inspections do you want us to do, and when do you want us to do them? You know, are you going to do the EICRs? Are you going to do the gas certificates? Or are you wanting us to do them? You know, all these different things have to be answered. And that's why it's important to put your terms in front of them and say, that's our terms, okay? And based on these terms, that's what we'll be doing for you, and that's what we'll be charging you. But I need to see what I'm going to be renting at the same time, because I could go around there and the place could be like a pigsty. And the expectation is you've got no smoke detectors or heat detectors. They're not interlinked. Oh, I've got one here. It's like the fire brigade put them up. It's like,
they're not compliant.
The fire brigade put them up and came round and just put away. They got a thing. They've got 3 smoke detectors and they put them in the hall. They're obsolete for rented property. Well, they are obsolete for private property now.
Private residential.
But people actually talk about them as if because they've got no knowledge of the legislation. Oh, you know, I've put this up. It's like, well, okay, but is that interlinked to all the other ones? And you've got them on the reception floors and in the hallways as well. And you've got a heat detector in the kitchen. You've got a carbon monoxide detector within 1 meter every gas appliance. You know, have you got your EICR? Have you got your have you got everything? You know, all the other things. Legionella testing. You got that? What's that? Legionella testing.
And they've now brought in the lead testing on the water, mains water supply.
So that's the thing. So do you need us to do that for you? Clearly, obviously, you do, because you're now telling me you don't have a clue what these things are. And that then leads me back to saying you have no idea what it's like to be a landlord. And then you find out they've just bought a property, or they've been an accidental landlord because they've just got it inherited from someone and decided decided, after looking at everyone else and saying, oh, everybody else makes a fortune in buy-to-let property. Biggest joke in the industry. You know, it's like, and then they think they're just going to make, money's just going to roll in because they're called a landlord. It's like, no, money's not going to roll in because you're called a landlord. Landlords do not make that much money out of property. Some don't make even anything at all. That's the news flash that everybody needs to know. It is not for the faint-hearted being a landlord. I'm putting a lot of people off here, but the great thing is, the more people that exit the market, the better it is for me.
Yeah, and I think as well, when it comes to, like you're saying, landlords are making lots of money and things, landlords will make money, but which compounds up over a long period of time. It's not an overnight, like, oh, they're going to be rich at the end of the year if they start doing buy-to-let. No.
I have no expectations of relying on my portfolio to actually make any money for me at all. The portfolio and the money it's generated and the profit it's generated is just to put back in to improving the stock, making it better for the tenant, and actually making sure there's enough reserves there to do any improvements or repairs on an emergency basis if I have to. And also to take into account sometimes that it doesn't go right all the time, and sometimes some tenants could actually, for no fault of their own, could actually not be able to afford their rent. Could be universal credit suddenly stops for some reason. They don't know why it stopped. All of a sudden, they can't pay their rent because universal credit stopped, because that's what they're on just now. It could be the fact that they lose their job because through no fault of their own, maybe another company went bust. They had a huge amount of money in that company, was due a bill, and therefore that company went bust as a result of that as well. And that can happen. And people get wiped out, and then they can't do that. So I can always weather a storm if anything like that happens with a tenant. You know, so that's the reality, to make sure that you can weather a storm and make sure the tenants are looked after, make sure your stock's still intact as a result. It's not there to be, and you will get the ones that will hold themselves out with their Ferraris and Lamborghinis. But the only people that do that are the people that are trying to attract investors to invest with them to get their money to use, or they're trying to sell you a course. You know, there's always an objective behind that. You know, look at me, the shiny penny thing. Look at me, look what I've done. It's like, you know, you've not done anything. You're just an Instagrammer.
Yeah, don't let people like that distract you from what, if you're doing buy-to-let, because that'll really take you off course, and then you might learn that, well, you will learn the hard way.
Yeah, unfortunately. Interestingly enough, I've got a comment on here. Landlords bust their butt on TikTok, and I would say they absolutely do, but investors don't.
If you've got the right age,
I would rather be an investor than a landlord. And what I mean by an investor is an investor gets a letting agent to do it for them. A landlord actually does it all themselves. And I tell you what, being a landlord is definitely not for the faint-hearted. I did it for a means to an end, but I wouldn't want to do it again as a result of knowing what it's like to be an investor now and actually have someone else do it for you and delegate these tasks. And all you're doing is overseeing, making sure everything's in place and it's all been done properly. That's all.
I think it's important to, because when people are starting out as investors or landlords and they're on their first maybe one or two properties and they're looking to build, then they will have a wee bit more of a hands-on approach, maybe from a monetary aspect, because they've maybe not got a lot of capital at the beginning or whatever, and that's fine. But then as you establish yourself, have somebody deal with everything for you, and make sure the legal side of things is taken care of properly, and don't try and just wing it on your own, because you're opening you could leave that for a can of worms to be opened on you as a landlord.
Everybody, see, it's like there's two queues here. There's investor queue and there's landlord queue.
Yeah.
Right. And I'll tell you what, everybody is lining up at the investor queue, because investor queue means you don't really need to work that hard to get this money.
Yeah.
But the landlord queue, nobody's lining up at that, because that means hard work, determination, not 9 to 5, weekend working, nighttime working, early morning working, constantly working all the time, constantly on. That's what a landlord does. They're always on, because they've got to answer calls, you know, in the middle of the night sometimes when emergencies happen. My heating's down. It's the middle of winter. It's Baltic. Okay, no bother. I've got a couple of spare heaters. I could pop them around the house now in the interim. We'll get the people round tomorrow after you've gone through the necessary checks. And that's what it's like to be a landlord. Oh, my electricity's off. It's like, okay, what's, is it working at the fuse box? And it's like, sometimes you just have to pop round and have a look at the fuse box. All right, flipping egg, your meters, you need to put power in the meter. I've had that. You need to put power. You've got a card. You need to top up your meter. That's what it is. Or my boiler's off. It's like, because it's maybe an old back boiler, and it has to be lit manually in the pilot light. And then all of a sudden, it's like, my pilot light's not working. It's like, so how did your pilot light go out? Well, I ran out of gas. It's the classic example, but they're not able to have the savvy to relight their pilot light. That's what it's like really to be a landlord. Nuts and bolts. You're down lying flat on a blooming back-to-back boiler, pressing the gas control knob in, and then pressing the igniter, click, 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 to get it right. It's lit. It's like then waiting 30 seconds to get this thing to heat up on the thermocouple, and then taking it off on the control knob, and it's on. Thank God for that. And it's like, that's it, lit now. Right, your boiler's back on. Right, I'm off. And it's that's the sort of antisocial. For a landlord, that is really antisocial things that you have to do. Out on Christmas Day, I've had it before. Out on Christmas morning, I've had to go out because they sat on the radiator came off the wall, the water started going downstairs, so I had to go out, and I actually had to basically turn over get a pair of Stilsons and turn over the tops of the pipes on the actual the pipework going into the radiator, because that come apart as well. I was able to control the one side with the valve, but there was no valve on the other side, so I basically had to crimp it over and then stop it. And then we had to organise a plumber to come out, and the next one was reasonably practicable in the next 2 or 3 days. And then we also had to provide them with heaters to make sure they didn't freeze, so electric heaters as well. So these are all the things that you've got to do as a landlord, and you've got to put up with. That's the sort of thing. So I would rather be an investor every single day, and that involves using a letting agent.
Yeah.
So you want to be a landlord, sell your boots, but be prepared for antisocial behaviour. Be prepared for it to be, inconvenient.
Yeah. Being a letting agent, obviously, and everything and more of what you just went through, Jim, it's a full-time job. So to do that as a landlord, self-managing and trying to do your own 9-to-5 job, you're going to burn out very, very quickly. It is quite a lot. So you need to keep that in mind. But with regards to obviously working with the right agents and things, we were talking about obviously the rapport that you build between the agents. So I mean, the last question to think about yourself is really, how do you actually feel about the agent that's sitting in front of you? I mean, do they make you feel excited about working with them? Do they fill you through confidence about their abilities? And do they make you feel valued as a potential client? If you've not got the right feelings and you don't gel, then, or maybe they make you feel a wee bit underwhelmed, then maybe you're not the right fit for each other. Why are you laughing?
I remember Janet saying one day about me, and it's good. I remember Janet saying, "You know what? He's awfully rude, but I tell you what, he's a bloody good letting agent."
Yeah, that's the job.
And I think that Janet's still a client of ours, isn't she?
Yeah, she is.
And that's about 15 years or something like that. It's but. And she referred us to every other person, all the farmers and everything.
Yeah, I've got a lot of girls on that. Yeah,
because I'm not a touchy-feely person. I'm a straight to the core. Mm-hmm. What's the problem? What do we need to resolve? How do we need to resolve it as efficiently as possible? I'm very systematic and process-driven in what I do. So yes, your feelings could get in the way sometimes, but if you want me to do the job, I'll get out there and do it to the best of any ability that anyone ever will be able to do. And that's the most important. But it was interesting, how do you feel about your agent when you said that? It's like, well, Janet didn't feel really good about me, but I tell you what, they're still with us, and they refer us to everybody as a result of that.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, definitely. But yeah, and then also, if you're thinking about your agent, think about how does their business actually work? Letting and managing multiple properties takes a lot of organization, and while every agent's day-to-day busy and full of maybe interruptions, you need to be sure that they know that they can tell you how they're going to handle certain things, and to understand how they operate on a daily basis, and to get a sense of your likely experience. So get some clarity around things, like maybe how many people are in the team, how are they trained? Do you know, are they well trained, and etc. Or property mark, and do they have industry recognised qualifications, which is what obviously property mark and Letwell are. How many properties do they actually manage in total? What's their property portfolio like? And how much do they look after? And do they have significant lists of tried and tested contractors? That's a really important one. We've spent a lot of years building up our contractors list, and we rely heavily on our main contractors, and they do an amazing job for us. They are always there. Obviously, we do out of hours emergency calls. We've got really good contractors on our call list for that. And also, if they're able to actually deal with the unexpected repairs and call-outs. I mean, you'll have your general emergency call-outs, but we get some weird and wonderful calls that sometimes I think, God, I've not heard that one before. Are we equipped to deal with unexpected things like that? Do we have the contractors? And we should be able to give you examples and experiences when we're speaking to reassure you that we could handle things like that as well. And given all the moving parts of an effective property management team, how do the team keep each other updated when there's so much happening? Do you know how communication, basically, I think is the most important thing there. And communication is such a key part of running lettings and property management. And I push this all the time, because a breakdown in communication can have a real detrimental effect on any kind of process or situation. So yeah, it's good to know what the communication and the mediation skills of your agent are.
It's quite interesting you said that about communication, because sometimes it doesn't always go right. I'll be honest. You know, it doesn't always go right. You didn't always get the answer. You don't always get the answer you want. But I tell you what, you're between the devil and the deep blue sea at this point in time, because the reality is you're literally just out the frying pan at the fire if you try to go anywhere else. Everybody else is just more or less, they're just the same, except worse, I would say, if that's the case. And I'm only talking from personal experience, because you know, the original owner of this business that we have, you know, I tried to train that person to do what I was doing. They just didn't get it. They just didn't get it at all. Now, they wasn't the original owner of the business. They were just the original owner of the name Fife Property. Because there was no business anyway, and there was no surprise, because that's the type of person they were. But I tried to get someone else to do it. But also, as I said, you know, I tried to get one of the major corporates to do it previously as well. A big, huge letting agent, a big, huge, what would I say, a light blue sort of logo in them, and they had a man's name at the beginning. if that would give you a clue who that agent was, without actually naming them. But they just didn't get it either. I remember on one occasion, actually, I was on the phone at the time when they phoned me, and they said to me, look, the bath's going to have to be changed, and it's a specialist type of bath because it's a smaller bathroom. And this was right in front of the tenant, by the way. They were with the tenant on an inspection, and they said the bathroom's got to be changed, or the bath's got to be changed because it's cracked or something like that. And I went, yeah, go ahead and do that.
Yeah.
I said that at that time. 9 months later, the tenant gave their notice to leave. And I went, that's unusual. Why are they giving the notice to leave? Because I've just agreed with everything they wanted. It's like, why would they leave? And I said to them, why are they leaving? It's like, oh, they've decided to go to another property. What? And then that's when I started to look at this, and I actually went to them. I actually knocked on their door because I really wanted to know what was going on, because I just felt there was something. You know how you get that sort of sixth sense? You think there's something not right about this. So I knocked on the door, and I says, "You got 5 minutes, and I'll sit down with you." It says, "You know, I notice you're leaving." It's like, you know, you've been a really good tenant. We've done everything for you. He went, well. I said, so what's the problem? He says, well, my bath's still not been changed after 9 months. I went, sorry? Your bath's not been changed after 9 months? Let me see it. I went up, and surely enough, the bath hadn't been changed. And I went, did you realise? And I remember this because that's why I relayed it. I says, did you realise when you were there? Because I remember you were there on the other end of the phone with the letting agent sitting next to you, because they were in your house, and they phoned me, and I said, go ahead and do that job. did you realise I'd actually said that? He went, I thought I heard that. He says, because I was there and I heard them saying it. I heard you saying it. And they said, they blamed it on me and said the landlord wasn't prepared to do it. And it was their failure to actually remember that the job was meant to be done, because I gave the go-ahead to do it. And 9 months passed without the tenant getting this new bath, and they just had to put up with this. You know, I think they actually had to end up just having a shower all the time, and the bath wasn't able to be used. And I was appalled. That was Green Gates, by the way.
Oh, was it? I was trying to think what property it was. Yeah.
Well, you'll know because you weren't with me at that time. I was using that organisation to let my property before I actually started the letting agency as a bolt on to what we were doing. But then that's the experience I had, and I thought, you're joking. So they sat and lied and blamed me and said I was the one that refused to change the bath. And it's all about reputation for me, remember? So that's why I went to their door and actually sat down with them and said, you know, what's going on? Because this doesn't make sense. You're a really good tenant, and I've looked after you, and I've done everything for you, and I've agreed to everything. So why would you be leaving to go to another place, which it was relayed to me is a better landlord? Like what? Eh? How could I be a bad landlord in your eyes as a tenant if I'm doing everything you're wanting me to do, and I'm looking after you, and you're paying your rent on time, and it's brilliant? It was the letting agent that just deflected it on me and blamed me.
That's crazy, and as obviously I know you as a landlord, and I know what how much free rein I've got to authorise work without even consulting you on your properties, just to make sure that things are obviously kept running and maintenance is up to scratch. So, and it's crazy to think that if you've already given them that go ahead, that they never actually done it. It's so much easier.
As I said, likewise, it was just the same. I've always done this. I've always lived on the income I earn in my day-to-day job. I have never really lived on the income in terms of what I'm making buy to let. I don't any of that income at all, really. Yes, now and again I will dip into it if I need it for some one-off, but I won't have that as any day-to-day money, if that makes sense. Because then what happens is your lifestyle increases, but your debts increase, and your day-to-day expenses increase as a result of that as well. Therefore, you end up being reliant on that income in the buy-to-let business and what you've just generated. So therefore, you're screwed when it comes to actually investing back into the property. When it goes outside normal parameters, like for example, the heating system goes down, suddenly the roofer goes round and realizes that your whole roof's rotten and it has to be completely replaced and refurbished. Or your electrics are suddenly completely out of date, or the legislation comes in and says you've got to change every electricity board, you've got to change every smoke detector has to be upgraded as well. You have to get certificates for this and certificates for that. And the next minute you're like, I can't afford to do that anymore.
Yeah.
You're out of business as a landlord, by the way.
Yeah, which could have been prevented.
So that's why I don't rely on my income from my buy-to-let, my investments. I just make sure that I can just use it as one-off, but not as day-to-day income, not as day-to-day expenses that I live on. So I just work on my job, and that's what I'd advocate for everybody. Everybody that's a property investor, or wants to invest in property, or wants to be a landlord, I advocate work a full-time job. Get someone else to pay you, work the job for them, do a great job for them, 9 to 5. Then your side hustle out of that is your buy-to-let investment portfolio. You start to build that in your side hustle. Takes a wee bit of effort. It's a bit inconvenient, but I tell you what, I'd rather be temporary ambitious to be permanently lazy.
Yeah, you're definitely right. And I think, as we say, just to double back on agents as such, and competent and good agents will always be open about every aspect of what their business is, including the challenges that they face, because they're proud of everything that they do, and they should be, especially if they have got that skill to obviously rectify situations when they go wrong and not hide them.
Yeah.
And then it brings you the question, so are you protected when things go wrong? And every business, as you said, Jim, has its moments where things don't go to plan. And a good indicator of a diligent and proactive letting agent is having those procedures in place that put things right.
That's good. We could talk about that in a minute, but I just want to answer a couple of questions that were mentioned on TikTok now, because it's quite important as to show you how a letting agent works. Should have followed up on the work, I guess, someone said. Okay, so should have followed up on the work, but then I'm doing the job of the letting agent. I've given the letting agent free rein to do what they want to do in the budget to do it. And then all I do is I'll pay the bill when it comes off my remittance, when it gets sent to me as a landlord. So that's how I trained. That's how I trained the letting agent, the corporate letting agent I was using at the time. So that's how I trained them. So why would I need to follow up on the work then? Because then I'm just doing their job. I may as well just do it myself if that's the case. And then another one said, clue might have been when you didn't receive any quotes for the new bath. Well, I don't need to receive any quotes if I've told them to go ahead and do it. I'm no bothered what the new bath's going to cost. It's the classic example of it. You have to get the new bath anyway. You've got no choice. I'm no there again to sit and waste my time trying to save 50 quid on a bath.
Yeah.
By the time by the time the letting agent's done that, and by the time they sent me new quotes for a bath, and by the time I've actually worked out, and by the time I sat down with it, it's like when somebody phones me and says, I could save you £250 a year. It's like, the fact that you phone me and I'm talking to you on the phone right now, I've lost 250 quid a year. And maybe more than that, with the time I could have been doing the job I should be doing in the first place, which is sales. Why would I want to save it if I can make more than it?
That's where the difference in the agent thing comes in. It was talked about at the start.
That's how you differentiate somebody from it'll work for someone else for the rest of their life from somebody it'll be a multi-millionaire.
Yeah.
Because they understand the value of their time, their skill, their expertise. They don't go out and dig the garden. Maybe they do for mindfulness.
Some people like to do that, and that's different.
But they get someone else to dig it while they earn more with the skill and expertise they've got. If I can earn 250 quid an hour and I can pay somebody to dig the garden, even 40 quid for an hour, then I'm still making a differential at £210 an hour. Why would I go and dig the garden then? We had this debate this morning. Somebody talked about the fact that would you pay off your mortgage? No. Why would I pay off my mortgage at 6% if I could earn 25% plus on the same money? Why would I want to pay off my mortgage if I could earn 25% and I'm only paying 6% with the mortgage? The differential is 19% at least I'm making on the same money. But I should pay off my mortgage? No. And that's the difference between, again, somebody will work for someone for the rest of their life and not actually work out exactly what they've done wrong. They don't realise they've not done it right, but they're convinced because they listen to everybody else outside of them, are not further forward than them.
Yeah.
Type. It's like sitting at the pub with a pint. It's like, what are you talking about, the economy and all the rest of it? And then, how are you getting on with your finances? Oh, well, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do this. What are you doing, Jock? Oh, well, I'm unemployed right now, in between jobs. It's like, okay, so you're trying to give me advice on how to be financially successful and wealthy, and you're unemployed at this point in time. That's a bit of a worry as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah,
definitely. And that's the sort of things you've got to think about as a landlord. You've got to understand. You've got to understand the realities of this. You've got to understand where you are right now. Where you should be.
Yeah,
that's the thing you've got to understand.
Yeah, but the understanding the value of your time and where you should be applying yourself and letting someone else take care of.
Yeah, Ross, sorry, Ross, you don't need to apologise. It's all right. I'm no, I don't, it's like you're saying, I'm sorry, executive decision, mate, apologies. And it's like, yeah, no, I get it. But I thought I'd explain that to people because, a lot of people don't realise that it's like, you shouldn't be doing that sort of thing. You shouldn't be doing the work that the letting agent's doing. If you start to micromanage the letting agent, then you've got the wrong letting agent, or you've relayed the wrong information about how you want the letting agent to work on your behalf. You've not given them the right remit. They don't understand what they're there to do for you. So, as I said before, rather than jump out the frying pan into the fire, go back to the letting agent and just sit down with them and get the ground rules laid out again and get an understanding of where you are right now. Try to work with people rather than just keep dismissing them every single time. and just saying, oh, well, you're no good. Right, I'm going to get another letting agent. You're no good. I'm going to get another letting agent. It's like, well, you're going to burn through a lot of letting agents. And I try to do that with contractors. I try to actually work with contractors, and I try to get them to understand the way I want them to work with me and the way that I want them to work with us when I speak to them. So when even some contractors have been with us for a long, long time, and even I have to go back to them now and again just to lay out the ground rules about where we are right now and what we expect of them as a result of that. Yeah, and it's nice to just to review that and go over that again, and that makes sure that everybody's happy and everybody knows up front where they stand with each other.
Yeah, it's really important. I think, like we say, not everything doesn't always go to plan, and if it doesn't, it's being able to sit down and kind of like do that damage control, manage everybody's expectation, and get the right result and move forward. That's a really important thing. I'm going to round up today because we're talking about how your agent could demonstrate to you that you're protected when things go wrong, and important things to ask is how do they maybe handle the out hours emergencies? Do you know, minimize the disruption of unexpected maintenance and manage disputes with tenants around maybe nuisance or damages or unpaid rent? Do you know, how do they tackle all these things? They should be able to sit and go through that with you quite confidently and demonstrate to you how they would handle that and use examples to do it as well. Do they belong to an authorised redress scheme? I mean, like the property ombudsman and things like that. Do you know, are they part of these governing bodies where that obviously look after the industry and monitor agents as well? Is their client money protection certificate visible on their website? And do they have their client money protection set up? You cannot have your letting agent registration in Scotland without having your client money protection certificate. Do you know, do they have all these things in place? Their letting agent registration should be on their website. It should be on all the listings. Do you know, these are all things that you need to look out for as well. And it just demonstrates that these letting agents are the lettings industry leading professionals as well, and that they all should be things that come second hand to any agent if you ask them.
I think all these, do they belong to all the right schemes, is absolutely right, because it shows that the processes are right as well. But importantly enough, it's how they act as a letting agent more than anything, because you know, somebody could belong to all the schemes, but they still don't do the job properly. And it's only because they're just paying to be along to these schemes. They'll not last very long, obviously, but they'll burn through a lot of landlords doing it, and they'll burn through you as well as a result of it. I think that's what you've got to think about. You know, how proactive as a letting agent, what do they do and how do they deal with people, and how do they scale as well, which is quite important. It's like what you talked about in the beginning there, about, you know, the fact that you could be one-man band. It's like, well, how are you going to cope when you get on? And I've had some before do that. Remember, they came back to us and said, look, you know, we've changed our mind. We need you to manage again because we thought that person was the bee's knees. But the reality was everything was reliant on them. And when they got other landlords on as a result, then my service actually dropped for that reason. So that's the sort of thing you've got to relay and you've got to think about. This is quite interesting. Ross actually says, how many properties would you be looking for before you actually get an agency? And it's like, you know, it depends on what your requirements are. If you're wanting to scale and you're wanting to build a portfolio and you want to be a big landlord, then my advice to you in the beginning was just start with an agent straight away and get the right agent. Because I would rather start with the right agent and find the right agent in the beginning, because it might take you a few people to go through with one property, because one property isn't going to be a financial ruin, then actually get to 10 properties and realize you've got to find an agent, and then you've got to go through about 3 or 4 agents to get the right agent. Potentially, I would say, I'm just saying hypothetically, 3 or 4 agents to get the right agent with 10 properties, which is even worse, because if they mismanage your 10 properties rather than the one property, then you've not got it. So it's about making sure you start with the agent right away, and then they work with you, because any really good agent will make sure they maximize your income every single time. They'll make sure they maximize the opportunities every single time. They'll make sure the hard line, the contractor every single time about, did they do a good job? Was the price, you know, what they charged, was that a good job for the price that they've charged? That's the sort of things you've got to do in the beginning. But by doing it at the very beginning of the journey is the best process. A lot of new landlords, when they first start out, are taught, do it yourself. because you can save money.
Yeah.
Which is a complete false economy. It's a complete false economy, because it's not. You can do the contractor work yourself, you save money. You can do some of the contractor work, but the letting agency side is peanuts. It's like you're saving like 50 quid. You're saving 50 or 80 quid a month. It's like, I know you think 50 quid or 80 quid a month is a lot of money, but if you've got a side hustle that you could go out and you're a joiner, you could do a job for someone else and do a homer, so to speak, and you could probably make more money than what the hassle is with the letting agency bit. Because as soon as you get a phone call from a tenant and you've got to respond to something, then you've got to go and find somebody to do that work for you. You've got to go and do that work yourself. And guess what? That work's free. You're not making any money out of that.
Yeah.
And you're taking yourself away from what you should be doing in the first place, which is what you get paid well at. And that's why you're able to invest in property, because you're getting paid well at this first thing in the first place. Could you imagine the surgeon at the hospital or the architect deciding to go and clean the toilet before they start the tenancy?
Yeah.
Hello? But I did it. I did it in the beginning. It was nuts. It's like, I'd cleaned all the houses. It's like, I should have just got somebody to clean the house. It's like, that was crazy. Because I was working as a financial controller and financial director in the industry. I was climbing the corporate ladder soon to be groomed to be in charge of PLC and be, and dealing with investment houses and stuff like that as well. That's where I was headed for. That's where I was the dizzy heights of, PLC, financial director. And I was out there just doing all these things, thinking this is a great, like I'm paying the price, all the rest of it. And it's like all these different things, like books tell you, pay the price. Fine, you can pay the price, but just be smart enough to work out when the price is right. The price is the right price to pay. That's what you need to work out. And once you get that right, you're on a winner, and you will build wealth. But there seems to be this dichotomy and this misconception in people's minds about they think they're going to build a portfolio overnight and they're going to buy 15 properties at once, and they're going to have no money down because their training program they were on told them that you could do that.
Uniform deals and things.
Because one person was wheeled out onto the stage that has done it in the whole lifetime of this agency it's been running, and they've managed to achieve it, and they give the impression that everybody can do this. Yeah, everybody can do this, but there's no very many opportunities out there. That's like looking for a unicorn. It's like, it's never going to happen probably, but you need to be primed just in case it does. But it's never going to happen for you. Most landlords go on the principle at the work on the slog. They do the hard effort, but they make it smart enough that they do the right things at the right times that they should be doing, and they leave everybody else to delegate it to the other people that should be doing it. This is the 7 strategies of wealth and happiness. This is the Stephen Covey. It's like, let's no work in quadrant 1. Let's work in quadrant 2. Let's make sure we get everything done before it gets into crisis management. That's the sort of way you should be running a portfolio and building a portfolio over time. But you've not got a portfolio until you're actually, probably about 10, 15 properties. Don't kid yourself. It's like, oh, I'm a portfolio landlord, but you've only got 3. Wow. I could do that. I could do that in the net. I could do that half an hour a week. It's like, or even less than that, actually. Well, I wouldn't do anything with that at all. So it does take time. I explained to someone the other night, actually, when we were at the property chat, it was quite interesting, how I said, if you watch every wealth creation show we've done on the wealth creation show on the playlist, and you put into action everything that we've said in that wealth creation show, within 5 years, you'll probably be a millionaire.
Yeah, and I sent them the link.
And he just laughed. And he went, oh, I've watched some of them, but I've really not got time. Sorry, did I miss something here? Okay, if you watch all the wealth creation shows that we've done, and you put all that knowledge and information together, and you act on that information that we've given you, and you work on these principles that we've told you in these wealth creation shows that we've done over the 100 episodes, you will literally be a millionaire in 5 years. Yeah, but I've, and it's like, what part of that did you not know? What part of that did not come across properly? Now, that's no the fact that would work, but it's the fact that he doesn't have belief it'll work for him.
Yeah.
That's what it is. And I says, I'll tell you what I'll do then. I will pay you to watch these shows over the next 5 years and implement that strategy. Okay. And you will be an employee of mine. Will you watch them and implement that strategy now? And he went, absolutely. I said, so you will work more for a boss than you will for yourself. What does that say about your mentality? What does that say about where you are? I'm not saying dismiss your boss. Work as hard for your boss as you work for yourself. But it's the fact that it's that broke thinking. They just don't get it. And then I thought to myself, I tell you what, I could employ him and I could pay him $1 million, because he'll probably make more than $1 million in 5 years anyway as a result of that. So I'd probably be better off actually saying, I tell you what, I'll guarantee you $1 million and you implement all that in the next 5 years, and I'll take what you earn and what you've laid down and all that wealth that you've put in place. Could you imagine? Because if even it gets to a portfolio of about maybe 10 properties after 5 years, 10 properties is round about $1 million. Yeah, 10 properties. Even though he's not got any money in them and they're all debt encumbered because they're high loan to values. If I wait 20 years, that will go up by $1 million anyway. But I've also got the income from it as well. So even if he got 10 properties over the 5 years and I paid him $1 million for that, then effectively in 20 years I would earn all that money and then another $1 million after that.
And more, yeah. But
he'd probably because 10 properties in 5 years isn't much. So he'd probably get a lot more than that. So this is what people don't get. They don't get it. They don't understand it. But I suppose it's because I've done it. Yeah. So it comes back to saying, it's every single time I'm going to do something, I find it the most successful person I know in that field, and then I just look at what they've done and I more or less replicate what they're doing, but improve it a bit at the same time. Because if they're going to get the results and I do what they're doing, I'm going to get the results as well. That's just a sidetrack, because I've got that question.
I know, but I know what you mean, and I know where you're coming from. That, and a lot of people, when they have that approach, it's, and especially like you're saying, it's all in there in the shows and things. I think we're on episode 116. We're doing on Monday, and there is a lot to learn in there. And if anyone wants to obviously jump on it's on the YouTube channel on the Wealth Creation Show playlist, and we'll be doing that on Monday. Monday at 12:30. We're doing. We're actually talking about discipline, which kind of falls in line with what you were just talking about.
Yeah, exactly. It's instantly Ross, I think it's Ross. Yeah, Ross said actually, sounds like good advice. Any suggestions to where to invest in Scotland? Fife, Ross.
Fife, yeah, Fife's really
Fife. Good. I do not go outside Fife, and everybody goes, that's a bit naive. It's like, no, it's common sense. It's all manageable within my area. It's all manageable what we do. Why would I know? Just dig up acres of diamonds right in front of me. Hello, acres of diamonds. Just dig them all up right in front of me. Rather than actually going, oh, they're over there. Let's get a boat or a plane and let's go over there. Let's get a train. Let's drive in our car for 3 hours and find out somewhere else where I can make a good deal. Look, everybody, I've made a fantastic deal. It's 3 hours away from me. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
That makes no sense at all. I've made £10,000. It's like, okay, but the hours that you've spent doing to try and get that £10,000, traveling back and forward, and all the time you've put into that to get that 10 grand is literally probably worked out at £2.50 an hour. I could have spent that time a lot better on actually buying portfolios right in front of me here, or buying property right in front of me. Acres of diamonds. Just dig them up right in front of you. That's a spade, by the way, in case anybody was wondering what the hell's that guy doing.
Yeah, so obviously if you're just starting out to build a portfolio, or you have a portfolio and you're looking for an agent or trying to find the best agent, a lot of what we've went through today is the key indicators to try and establish a good relationship and really work out whether they're going to look after your investment and protect you properly. Knowing that your letting agent or your property manager prioritizes your protection really provides you that peace of mind. So don't shy away from asking all these questions that we went through today. Really grill your agent. And as a letting agent, I'd be quite happy for anyone to put questions to me, and I will happily answer them on anything that we went through today. And I put my contact number and my direct email and things in the blog attached to this. So anyone, feel free to reach out to me about anything that we've covered today in terms of the services of letting agent, property managers and things as well. And I think that's it for today. I was going to say about the wealth creation show, but we've already said Monday at 12:30.
Show discipline. I think it's important as well to say that, you know, I'm just going to throw a wee, you know, truth bomb in here to most landlords and investors out there. You have no idea what you're doing. You don't. You have no idea what you're doing because you're listening to the wrong people. I'll genuinely say that. Most people that teach what they're teaching right now have no idea what they're, you know, what the most efficient method to build a portfolio is and how to do it. They don't have a clue, but they teach it and everybody listens to it because they're all saying the same thing. See the unison thing, and I go back to saying, about if you put 100 children, one after the other in front of them, and you say, what's 2 + 2 at the first one, and they go 4, and then you go, no, it's 5. And you go to the next one, you say, what's 2 + 2? And they go, no, it's 4. And you go, no, it's 5. And you go to the next one and go, what's 2 + 2? And the next person goes, how's we think about it? And goes, it's 4. It has to be 4. It's 2 + 2. It's 4. Yeah, definitely 4. It's like, no, it's 5. And you go to the next one and they go, what's 2 + 2? And they go, is it 5? Absolutely correct. And then you go to the next one and they go, what's 2 + 2? And they go, oh, it's 5. Next one, 2 + 2. Oh, it's 5. And the next one, before you even got out of your mouth, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5. That's how you socially condition someone. That's how you socially condition a society. And that's how we are socially conditioned in this world and even in this country. More about that in the Wealth Creation Show on Monday at 12:30.
Yeah, we'll talk more about that. Discipline, Monday, the Wealth Creation Show at 12:30. Thanks very much for everyone that's contributing the comments and things. It's good to keep it interactive. Thanks so much for all your insights and on the topic today, Jim. And we'll leave it there, and we'll see you guys on Monday at 12:30 for the Wealth Creation Show.